The wind over Dry Creek Valley had teeth that winter, sharp enough to bite through wool and leather. Snow swirled between the wooden buildings of the small frontier town, carried in ghostly spirals that scraped across the frozen ground. People moved in short bursts, quick dashes from one building to another, before retreating indoors to the warmth of potbelly stoves. At the center of the street, the monthly horse auction had drawn every able-bodied rancher for miles. The corral fence groaned under the weight of spectators, all craning their necks to see the spirited bay stallion kicking up powder in the pen. The animal was a beauty-strong legs, sleek mane, the kind of horse that could carry a man through the wilderness and back without faltering. Among the crowd stood Luke Callahan, a man whose presence made people straighten without realizing it. His brown duster was patched at the shoulders, his hat pulled low against the wind, and his eyes, a cold, piercing blue, were fixed on the stallion. Luke had built his ranch from nothing but grit and long days in the saddle, and the prospect of owning that horse had stirred something in him. The auctioneer's voice rang out. "Starting bid $40. Who'll give me 40? Bids flew from the crowd, the price climbing fast. Luke watched the numbers rise with measured calm, his hand resting on the rail. Then, from the corner of his vision, movement soft, hesitant caught his attention. Young woman stepped into the ring's shadow. Elara McKenna, the Irish girl from the edge of town. She wore a plain white dress, the fabric thin for the weather, her hair in a long braid that reached the small of her back. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, but her eyes, dark, searching, locked onto Luke's. She threaded her way toward him, each step deliberate. The murmurs from the crowd hushed as they watched her approach. When she reached him, she stopped just short, her breath clouding the air between them. "Don't buy the horse," she said softly, her voice trembling not from the cold, but from urgency. Luke frowned, tilting his head. "That so? And why's that?" Her lips parted, and for a moment, the words seemed to stick. Then she spoke, low enough that only he could hear. "Choose me, rancher, and I'll be yours till the end." The noise of the crowd returned in a rush, the auctioneer's chant pulling attention back to the pen. But Luke didn't move. He studied her face, delicate, yes, but with a strength behind the eyes that frontier life had carved into her. She wasn't joking. She wasn't playing coy. There was a bargain in her words, and in this town, bargains often decided the shape of a man's life. "Why me?" Luke asked. Her gaze faltered toward the stallion, then back to him. "Because if you buy that horse, you'll ride off and never see me again. But if you choose me," she took a shallow breath, "you'll have more than an animal to keep you warm in winter." It was a strange thing for a woman to say so boldly, especially in front of the town. But Elara had her reasons, tied to debts, to family, to the dark shadow of a man named Warren Kane, who'd been circling her like a buzzard over carrion for months. Kane had money, a sprawling cattle spread, and a mean streak that everyone knew about, but no one dared challenge. If he won the stallion today, Elara would have no bargaining chip to pull Luke into her orbit. And Luke? He'd heard enough about Kane to know that any woman trying to get away from him had good reason. The auctioneer's call yanked Luke's attention back to the present. $80. "Do I hear 85? Kane's voice cut through the air. 85! Luke's jaw tightened. He could feel Elara's eyes on him, feel the tension in the space between them. His hand lifted, then hesitated. The decision he made in the next few seconds would ripple across more than just his own life. The snow swirled harder, and somewhere a horse snorted in the cold. Say. Luke didn't raise his hand. The bidding surged past him, Kane's smirk widening as he secured the stallion for $95. The crowd cheered half-heartedly. No one liked Kane, but they liked a good show, and Kane had bought himself one fine horse. Elara's shoulders dropped in relief. "Thank you," she whispered. Luke studied her for another long moment before speaking. "You want to tell me what that was all about?" Her breath misted as she looked past him, toward Cain leading the stallion from the pen. "He's been after me for months. I told him I wasn't interested. He didn't take it kindly. If you'd bid, he'd have taken it as a challenge. You might have won the horse, but you'd also have won yourself a feud you didn't ask for." Luke's eyes narrowed. "And you think I need saving from a man like Cain?" She shook her head. "I think you've got enough fights on your hands already." Then, after a pause, "And maybe I do too." They walked together toward the edge of the crowd. The snow was starting to thicken, a fine veil settling over the town. Luke's boots crunched in the frost as he glanced at her sideways. "What exactly did you mean by choose me?" Ilara stopped in the middle of the street. "I meant I can work. Cook, mend, keep a home. I can ride. I can keep you from being alone in that big ranch house of yours. And I can make sure Cain doesn't get what he wants." Luke couldn't help a wry smile. "That's an interesting sales pitch." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "This isn't about love, Luke. Not yet. It's about survival. Yours, mine. Maybe both." He looked at her then, really. Looked and saw the edge in her. She wasn't fragile, despite the dress and the cold. She was a survivor. And in the West, that counted for more than beauty. By the time they reached the livery, Luke had made up his mind. "You know where the Callahan Ranch is?" She nodded. 3 miles west, past the cottonwoods. Pack your things. Be there before nightfall." Her eyes widened. "That's it. You're saying yes?" "I'm saying," Luke said, "you've got till sundown to prove you mean what you said." The snowstorm hit harder by the afternoon. Luke had the fire roaring by the time Ilara arrived, her dress hidden beneath a heavy wool coat. She carried a single battered suitcase and a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. He took them from her without a word and set them by the door. That first evening was quiet. Luke cooked beans and salt pork while Ilara unpacked in the small spare room. She didn't speak much, but when she did, her voice was steady. She told him about her parents, lost to fever when she was 16, about the years she'd worked at the mercantile, and about Cain's slow, suffocating pursuit. The days that followed were filled with the work of winter ranch life, hauling water, feeding stock, mending fences splintered by the wind. Ilara proved herself quickly. She could wrangle a mule as easily as she could mend a torn sleeve. She didn't shy from the cold or the long hours. One night, as they sat by the fire, Luke asked, "When you said till the end, what end did you mean?" She looked at him over the rim of her coffee cup. "Whichever one comes first. End of trouble or the end of us?" Luke chuckled low. "Trouble's got a way of sticking around out here." Her gaze didn't waver. "So do I." By spring, Cain had made his move. He rode to the ranch with 2 men, demanding Ilara come with him. Luke met him at the gate, Winchester in hand, his voice low and cold as the river ice. "She's not yours," Luke said. "Never was. And if you step 1 foot past this fence, you'll find out just how much I mean that." Cain's eyes darted. Between Luke's grip on the rifle and the unwavering figure of Ilara standing on the porch behind him, he spat in the dirt, muttered something foul, and turned his horse. The 3 riders disappeared into the hills, leaving only the wind and the creak of the gate. That night, Ilara sat beside Luke at the fire. For the first time, she let her hand rest lightly on his. "I think," she said softly, "we're past survival now." Luke's fingers closed over hers. "Yeah," he said, "I reckon we are." Outside, the snowmelt ran in quicksilver streams, and the mountains stood silent witness to a promise that in the language of the West meant forever.